Hey y'all, Zach McDonald, your real estate agent with Real Property Associates, and this is my Seattle housing market watch for March 3rd, 2025. Well, we're jumping into one of our last market watches for the winter, heading into the spring here shortly. And the housing market continues to pick up as far as new listings coming on the market. We're also seeing the competition, which we've been noticing over the past month or so, continuing to remain relatively stable. And some of that may be because we've seen interest rates coming down over the past few weeks. Interest rates, in fact, are down as of today. Mortgage News Daily survey at 6.74%, still near 7%, but lower and lowest kind of ballpark of the year. Last week, 6.8%. So down slightly from last week. The headline they've got is, mortgage rates approaching 4-month lows, which would be, again, the lowest point in 2025. Now, are rates going to keep dropping dramatically? That's not the expectation this year. The expectation, as we've kind of readjusted for the current political climate and inflation, and we're looking at maybe a little bit closer to that 6 range at the best, right? So right now, still hovering around 7. In the Seattle area, it's not uncommon to see multiple offers. It's not quite 50% of the time, but in King County, it's relatively close. In Snohomish County, it's a little bit less, but still more than 30% of the time, you're going to see multiple offers. So pretty much every third house that you go to look at, if you were touring houses, would, in a sense, get multiple offers, right? There are some houses that are always going to get multiple offers because they're amazing and their location's amazing and they're priced well. Other houses maybe don't have as desirable of a location, or maybe there's something about the house itself that's less desirable. But in any case, it's a pretty good percentage of multiple offers in the market. And as we're looking at the data here, we'll start off with kind of the King and Snohomish County general info together, and then we'll look at how competitive the housing markets are towards the end of the video. Now, new listings, 585 week over week and 446 the previous week. I will say we're filming a day earlier this week. And so we've got a little bit of last week's numbers in here, one day, Monday, in here from the previous week. So maybe slightly different. Price reductions, another number we're looking at, 215 last week, 205, about the same. We're still seeing price reductions, right? Not everything is selling with multiple offers. Contingent sales, 14 last week, also 14, so same number there. And if we're looking at the pending sales, 692 this week versus 691 last week, right? So that number is staying about the same as well. And then sold listings, 573 as compared to 422 the prior week. As a reminder, we just hit the end of the month last week, so it would make sense that we would see more closings as we went through that final week of the month. Now, we talked about interest rates already, but interest rates have been trending down, and I think that's contributed a little bit to the buyer uptick, but not too much, as rates haven't come down significantly. They've remained in a relatively similar place. But let's focus in on King County, and I hope you've liked this edition of looking at the pending sales of the past week and getting to see some of the data from the Northwest Multiple Listing Service. I enjoy it, and I'm glad I get to share this with you here now too. We'll look at King County, then we'll look at Snohomish County here next. But when we look at King County over the past week, we can see that King County's pricing has remained relatively similar. So the median sales price over the past week was $940 in King County, and that's the same as last week. And the unpublished list price to pending price, right? So we're looking at how much of the asking price did the house sell for. The average was 2% over asking price, same as last week. So houses are in general selling more than the asking price. Again, what that means is you have some that are selling for considerably more than that asking price and some selling for less. And we see that when we look down at the number of pendings with multiple offers. 42% had multiple offers. So again, it's not necessarily a one-for-one comparison, because sometimes people will offer early and offer significantly over the asking price, right? So that will skew the numbers again. But let's just say maybe 8% of those were people that did that. A lot of times sellers will wait and buyers will wait as well to play the game, so to speak, the silent auction as I call it. So that would make 50% of the houses selling at or below the asking price versus over the asking price, even in those numbers. I bet it's even more than that. But still, again, 42% getting multiple offers. Looking at the pendings with inspection addendums, 36. Last week was 37, about the same. If we look at pendings with a financing addendum, 61% this week, 62% last week. And then pendings with an escalation addendum, 17%. And same thing here, the previous week, 17%. And looking at these numbers, they're almost the same. So week over week, the housing market in King County hasn't changed too much. It's remained somewhat competitive. You're seeing people removing inspection contingencies the most often, sometimes removing the financing contingency. Almost 40% of buyers are either going to be cash in this case or removing that contingency altogether. If we look at the pendings with the escalation addendum, we're seeing that about 17% of buyers are incorporating that in King County into their strategy in some way. Now let's look at Snohomish County. So Snohomish County's numbers are similar to last week as well. So we are seeing houses selling for about the asking price on average, 100% of the list price. And then for the pending price, $797,000, $475,000. Last week was $799,000, $950,000. Super similar, right? Things have stayed about the same in Snohomish County as well. We're seeing that the pendings with multiple offers, 37% last week, 36% this week, again, about the same. Pendings with an inspection addendum, 32% this week, actually slightly up from last week, 30%. So 2% more. Again, so similar, not a huge difference here. If we're looking at pendings with the financing addendum, exactly the same at 65%. And same thing with the escalation addendum, 12% of purchase contracts in Snohomish County had the escalation addendum, and that was exactly the same as last week. So in summary here, looking at these numbers, it seems like Snohomish County is a little bit less competitive than King County as a whole, but relatively similar in a lot of ways. We're also seeing that the last week, the market has remained relatively steady and stable in King and Snohomish County. It hasn't gotten more competitive, but it also hasn't gotten less competitive. I think we've had a combination of more buyers coming into the market. We've also had some more inventory coming on the market, as we've seen over the past few weeks, a bit of an uptick, which is expected in the spring. That will continue into the rest of the spring here and then also into the summer. So we would expect that inventory numbers, the amount of houses being listed, and then the amount staying on the market will get bigger and bigger and bigger over time. So right now, if you're a buyer and you're in this place where it seems like it's competitive, especially if you're looking for a single family house, it feels competitive. There's a lot of people going in and out. I'm seeing this when I'm doing showings and also with listings coming up here, scouting out those scenarios. And I think that we're seeing just a lot more competition for the single family houses versus the condos right now. And conversely, the condos in King and Snohomish County have been sitting on the market a little bit longer. They're taking longer to sell. They're seeing more price reductions. They are not as desirable right now for buyers as the single family houses. And so those single family houses are in this scenario selling over asking price and getting a lot of competition, whereas the condos are, again, taking longer to sell and not as competitive. So for buyers, if you're looking for a condo, this would be different for you than the people that are looking for single family houses. And again, this data would apply better to them. If you have questions about your scenario, maybe you're thinking about buying a house this spring or summer, or maybe you're also considering listing and taking advantage of some of this competition that is in the market, the lower inventory. If that's you and you don't have someone to talk with, I'd love to be a resource for you. I help people all the time that reach out to me on this YouTube channel, and I'd love to connect with you as well.